I'm Rick Edwards. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Richmond. We'll be doing a mid-year crime briefing and then answering some questions you may have. So first for us to discuss an update on our officer-involved shooting from earlier this year, 2600 block of Melbourne Street. March 6th, we had an officer-involved shooting, non-fatal, that we received a letter from the Richmond Commonwealth's Attorney's Office declining prosecution. Those officers went through their internal review and are back on the street patrolling 1st Precinct. I get a lot of questions about the Shockoe Bottom in general. That's been a hot topic for us. If you all have been following the media nationwide, this week we saw a series of mass shootings in Indianapolis, in Albany, Philadelphia, Chicago, even as close as Charlottesville, where multiple people are being shot at events. And there's nothing really special about the Shockoe Bottom specifically as to why we're experiencing some of these challenges there. It's more young people showing up to events armed with guns and settling their disputes, which should be fist fights with gunfire. And I just want to talk about that because when we look at what our major contributors to gun violence is in our city right now, it is related to that. It is arguments that escalate. And to link to the Shockoe Bottom, we have some news that we've been asked about that I wanted to update the community about. We had a DPW worker who was shot on May 21st in the Shockoe Bottom. Now, there's been some... he was doing his job that night. It was late at night, but he was running his route when there was a fight and shots were fired. He was wounded. Luckily, I met with him in the hospital after he got shot. I've talked to him since then. He's doing well and recovering. But, he was just out there doing his job and got caught up in this and was shot. And we were able to make an arrest in this case. So of an individual named Jordan Gale, age 22 of Henrico County, has been charged with 4 felonies relating to that shooting. And it's interesting to note, he was apprehended on June 28th in the Shockoe Bottom, right where the shooting occurred. And when he was taken into custody, another firearm was recovered. And the lead investigator on that is Detective Hartley, so thank you for your great work on that. Just another update that we get asked about. This was a disturbing picture that we found during the course of an investigation where you can see 2 individuals pointing guns at a marked Richmond police cruiser. An individual named Sean Hexel, II, age 18 of Richmond, was arrested relating to this crime. He was also arrested in the Shockoe Bottom with a firearm on June 6th, and then later arrested in Virginia Beach. There were Channel 6 reported on this locally. Virginia Beach arrested 50 people. And it's the same kind of thing we see in the Shockoe Bottom. Multiple people walking around with illegal firearms in our city, and Sean was arrested in that as well. And it's really important when we talk about that, we need to continue to hold people accountable, even for the misdemeanor gun crimes like this. But as you can see, there are Glock switches in these guns that are pointed to the officer, and that officer had no idea that was happening. Graduation safety. We all remember what happened in 2023 at the Huguenot graduation mass shooting. So since then, last year and even this year, we've changed our tactics. So we have plainclothes detectives. We understand that the venues are safe, that there's security at the venues. There are magnetometers at them. We can ensure those venues are safe. Where the gaps are is the parking deck. So we have plainclothes detectives working all the days of our graduation, monitoring those parking decks, and 3 arrests were made. And these 3 firearms were seized. 3 individuals were charged on 2 different days. So people are still continuing to bring firearms to a graduation celebration. And we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to work on those cases to keep our graduation safe. And it's just frustrating for us and we have no information that they were going to use these guns in any nefarious manner. But after what happened, we're not taking any more chances. It's another case we continue to be asked about. Even national press has asked us about this. So Matthew Williams was arrested on April 21st, where the Richmond Police Department received this picture. And as you can see, this is a picture that was sent to an individual with Sean allegedly pointing a firearm at a very young child. Our officers went there to South Richmond, we were able to surround the house, make an arrest, and he was charged with attempted murder, use of a firearm during the commission of a felony, child abuse, neglect, and possession of a firearm by a previously convicted felon. There were other firearms in the house when we did that search and surrounding call out. And we were able to take him into custody safely, but I will say this is one of the more disturbing things that I've ever seen in my time with the Richmond Police Department. Now to the violent crime mid-year statistics. So murders went from 28 last year at this time to 32. So a percentage increase of 14%, but 4 additional murders. Robberies are significantly down, 16%. Aggravated assaults are up, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that because these are aggravated assaults that include strangers assaulting each other, but also violent domestic assaults, which we're going to discuss. And then robbery commercials, they're still up 7%. But if you remember me talking last quarter, we saw an 89% increase. We were able to make some significant arrests. Some vape shops were targeted for very violent commercial robberies. And now, while there's still an increase mid-year, we saw a significant decrease in Q2. So that 89% is now 7%. And we're overall flat. Now, it says 0%, but we're still 2 crimes down. So at this time last year, we had 484. For the mid-year, we were at 482. So when I look at that, we're on pace, and I don't even want to jinx it, but last year was the first time in over 20 years we had under 1,000 violent crimes for the year. We're on pace for that again and even doing a little bit better. So let's drill down on it. As I like to say, I always like to compare Richmond to Richmond in the past. So here's our violent crime threshold. So these are all violent crimes. If you look at where our average is 502, we're 4% below the average, but this is a 7-year mid-year analysis. And I'll draw your attention to 2020, and that is kind of an anomaly when it comes to violent crime. Obviously that's when we were dealing with COVID. It just started civil unrest, but COVID is what we think really limited reporting for all violent crime, and we saw that outlier. But when you look at it, we're still below the 7-year average going forward. All right, here's the murder threshold, 7-year, mid-year. So the average is 29, and we're at 32. So, 32 is 32 too many, but we're working diligently to lower that number. This is what I am really excited about, and some good news we can talk about, which are non-fatal shooting thresholds. So the average is 102 over the last 7 years. This is the lowest in 7 years of 85, and we have some reasons why we think that's occurring, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But here's that breakout of what we saw last year, 99, and we're at 85 this year for a 14% reduction in non-fatal shootings. This is a stat that I like to track called the all-persons shot in criminal incidents. And the reason this is important is because very rarely do we see shootings where the intention is not an attempted murder. So it's almost always, if someone survives a gunshot wound in our city, it's by the luck of the angle of the firearm or the skill of the surgeon, but it's still the same intention. So we would like to track this number. So in 2023, we were at 130. Last year, when we saw that significant reductions, we were at 125. And this year, mid-year, 114 people shot, which is, like I said, a steady improvement over already good numbers historically. This is what we think is driving it. So you can really see the difference in multiple victim shootings. So in the mid-year, we look at how many people have been shot in multiple incidents, where multiple victims occur in one incident, rather. So 17 people were shot non-fatally, 2 fatally in these multiple shooting incidents. But you look at last year, we had 34 and 8 fatally, where we were seeing 4, 5, 6 people shot in one incident. So we're not seeing that this year, knock on wood. We've only had 1 triple shooting, and the rest have been doubles. So that's how we're able to lower that overall victim incident. And part of the reason we're talking about that is we've made some success with Glock switches. We're seeing less of those on the street, even though I mentioned it. The picture we had with those individuals pointing the guns at the officers had switches on them. But we are seizing more guns, a 17% increase in gun seizures this year. So last year in the mid-year, we had 834. This year, we are at 978. And again, this is when we break out the aggravated assault threshold. These are not domestic related. We'll talk about that specifically in a few minutes. But this is where we're seeing an increase. So these are the types of assaults that are felony assaults. So if someone hits you with a stick, if someone stabs you, if you're sprayed with mace, all that counts as an aggravated assault, and that's up 1% over the 7-year average. Let's talk about juveniles being shot. Again, this is, a concern we always talk about, but good reductions in this as well. So when we look, 2 juveniles have been killed in our city this year. One was a 15-year-old girl in Gilpin Court. The other was a 17-year-old girl who was abducted and shot and left in a wood line. Those are the only 2 juveniles we've had murdered. We've had 9 non-fatally shot and then 3, unfortunately, accidentally shot. But again, all those numbers lower than the last 2 years previously. So we're pleased about the production, but still never want to see any of our kids wounded. And then accidental shootings. These are all adults and kids. So this is up. So 16 people in our city have accidentally either shot themselves or one of their friends discharged a weapon accidentally and wounded them. So 13 adults and 3 juveniles. 10 adults last year and 2 juveniles, and then the previous year, 8 adults and 4 juveniles. And this is something that I think we talk about, and I'll get to a slide later about the importance of just basic gun safety, and we can still help with that. We still have gun safes that we're giving out to our community. We can still talk to people about safely handling firearms and the importance of doing that. We talk a lot about our hotspots. So as I mentioned before, that's based on 5 criteria. So we look at 5 crimes to determine where the gun violence is going to occur in our city. Those are gun-related murders, aggravated assault shootings, robbery shootings, shooting into occupied dwellings, and shooting into occupied vehicles. And when we look at that data, we come up with 5 years to analyze that, and then every 6 months we look at updated data so we can follow the latest trends. So we've made a few changes. Last 6 months, we had 17 hotspots. We took 5 of those hotspots off the list. We're adding 3, and the 3 new ones are the 2200 block of North 23rd Street, which is in Fairfield Court, the 000 block of East Hill Street, which is in Gilpin, and then the 1200 block of East Brooklyn Park, which is obviously in Northside and Highland Park. And those are some trends where we're just following where the data is, and we're going to put our officers where they can do the most good. At this time, I'd like to introduce my friend Lamont Barnes. Lamont works for Justice Services, and he's going to talk about how the whole city is using these hotspots to try to have the most bang for our buck so we can lower our violent crime rate. So Lamont, would you come up and appreciate your comments, my friend?
Thank you, Chief. Yep. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank Chief Edwards and also my director, Dawn Barber with Justice Services, for the opportunity to go out and do the crime prevention through environmental design reports, which highlights a lot of the areas that we like to look into to make sure that the environment itself is conducive for safety. And so when we do that, I apologize here. When we do that, this is one of the areas, the previous slide had the 1400 block of Jenny Shear Road, which again, we were looking at the lighting in the area. So when you look at the lighting in the area, here we go. So when we look at the area of the 1400 block of Jenny Shear Road, you can see that lighting is impacted from coming out on the walkways because of the tree foliage that's overtaking the lighting. So we're working hand in hand with Department of Public Works and with Department of Utilities to try to get that rectified so that way citizens can be safe in their community. In addition to that, the apartment complex, Ashley Oaks, is going to put light fixtures on the outside of the buildings because, again, that's an area that is vulnerable for our citizens to be able to move safely throughout their community. And so you can see in the picture there that is extremely dark in the area. So the housing, the apartment complex, along with RPD, Department of Public Utilities, and Department of Public Works, is working in concert to make sure that these areas are lightened so that way we can brighten that area to make the area more safe for our residents in the community. All right, so then we also evaluated or looked at through the crime prevention through environmental design tool that we're utilizing is the mixed-use communities as well. This is another area that is a hotspot that was identified by RPD, the 2900 block of Chamberlain Avenue, and these are the businesses that qualify for the CARES money, and which is the commercial area revitalization effort, and the enterprise zone is incentives that the city offers business owners in order to make sure that they can enhance lighting, enhance surveillance on the interior and the exterior of their establishments. And so these businesses will be in a position to be able to assist RPD if something were to happen in that area. They will be registered, because a lot of the areas that when we go into the area, I also introduce to them the Richmond Connect program, which is through RPD. And then that will increase the opportunity for RPD maybe to resolve some of the issues that are related to criminal activity. And so because of that, these businesses in this area all qualify and are taking advantage of the opportunities of the resources that the city offers them to be able to increase the safety measures in those areas. Then, on the other side of that, we want to also provide our citizens with an opportunity to be able to, if an incident does occur where someone needs help, a bystander that has this life-saving training, that is a partnership that we have with Trauma Healing Response Network, VCU Health, Bridging the Gap, also with RPD and DJS. We are providing these opportunities out in the hotspot communities, which we have 300 kits. It's a pilot program to see if these individuals would be in a position to be able to help a citizen that may have been impacted with a life-threatening situation. And because of that, so far, the response has been great. We've done a quarter of the training so far. We're moving forward. And then the thing that's even better is that we were in Hillside Court doing this training, and we got a little preview back there of the mayor and the chief. They just happened to be in the area. We didn't invite them. They just happened to be there when the training was taking place. The kits are compact enough where you can put in your book bags, or you can have them in your vehicle. You can grab them real quickly, and then those kits will allow a individual to be able to help someone if they have a life-threatening situation, where they can pack that wound until emergency services arrive to be able to move forward. So we want to equip our residents with the tools that they need in order to be able to help someone else in the event something happens. And so with that, I think it ties into everything that the chief is trying to do across the city. This is just another tool that we can utilize in order to make sure that Richmond is the best place to live and move forward and raise your family. Any other things?
Well, Lamont, I think one thing I'll say about this program is, in the last 5 years, all of our RPD officers are carrying tourniquets. Many of them have go bags with quick clot and other packing material, and our officers have deployed that. And we know we're saving lives to do that, but if we could grow that exponentially so people in communities that are experiencing gun violence can have some control over it, while we know that seconds count when lethal blood loss is at play, and just empowering people with knowledge. I really appreciate that, Lamont, and utilizing the framework of where we can do the most good in the places that are experiencing the most gun violence. So thank you, great job, appreciate you. So now I'd like to talk about, I kind of broke this out a bit about domestic violence threshold. And when we look at our felony domestic violence, we saw a disturbing trend this year. The average is 45, we're at 56 right now. And I'd like to I'd like to invite Colette McEachin to come up and speak about some of the things her office is doing in coordination with the YWCA. So Colette, thank you.
Good morning. My name's Colette Wallace McEachin. I'm the Commonwealth's attorney for the city of Richmond, and I have with me this morning Ms. Shanti Wynn. She is the Senior Director of Domestic and Sexual Violence Services for the Richmond YWCA. We all know that a healthy, loving family is the foundation of a strong and safe neighborhood, city, and state. Domestic violence is like a nasty virus that attacks and infects all the branches of that family tree. And like a parasitic virus, domestic violence infects every member of the family. It terrorizes women and leaves them ashamed and feeling powerless to protect themselves and their children. It traumatizes children and exposes them to violence in a way which normalizes that behavior and which the children may then express and bring out into the schools and into the community. Violence in the home leads to violence in our schools, violence in our neighborhoods, and is a contributor to the gun violence that we all abhor in the city of Richmond, in which the chief is speaking about. But the good news is that Richmond is not letting this virus go unchecked. The Commonwealth Attorney's Office has a dedicated team of prosecutors and victim witness advocates who focus successfully on prosecuting domestic violence offenders. I especially want to thank all the women, all the mothers, all the aunties who testified in court and who had the strength and courage to face their abuser, see that person prosecuted, and provide safety for their children. But we also recognize that it is always better to be proactive than reactive. To prevent domestic violence by supporting the women and mothers who seek help and give them the tools and resources they need to escape the violence in their home. That's why, as the chief said, I'm very proud of the fact that my office strongly supports the creation of a family justice center in the city of Richmond. For those of you who have not heard me talk about it for the past 6 months, a family justice center is a one-stop shop where survivors of family violence can access law enforcement, advocacy, health care, and other critical services under one roof. It would be one place so that the woman does not need to go from the courthouse getting the protective order to VCU Health getting medical treatment for her bruises, abrasions, cuts, whatever has happened to her and her kids, going to RPS and having to explain to each school that each of her children attends why that child may now be temporarily homeless or what is going on in that child's life. This would be one place where the woman would go, and those agencies and other agencies would have a representative there, so that the burden is on us to give that support and those resources to the woman, instead of her having to travel around the city of Richmond when transportation may be difficult, her kids may be having their own issues. So the Family Justice Center is strongly supported by myself, by the YWCA, by the mayor of the city of Richmond, by the chief of police, and we look forward to bringing that to the city. I'll let Shanti speak a little bit more about the ongoing programs that is leading up to the creation of the Y, because we want community support. This is not going to be a top-down creation by the city, by my office, by anyone. We want to provide this for the city, and we need the city's impact. So I will pass this to Shanti.
Good morning, everyone. Definitely happy to be here to be able to talk about the services that the YWCA Richmond provides in our community, and excited. We're excited about the Family Justice Center that we're working on. We are in the process of our strategic planning, which we will be doing next week in an effort to build a family justice center for survivors of domestic and sexual violence in the city of Richmond, to again make sure that it's one place that a person can go to receive the support if they're a survivor. As far as our services, we provide a 24/7 hotline. Anyone can call. You will reach a person that can provide safety planning, get you linked to services, whether it's counseling, case management, court advocacy, housing support, emergency housing support. If someone is fleeing a violent situation, there's emergency support available, and it's a regional hotline. That number is 804-612-6126. I'll say it again. It is 804-612-6126, and that is a regional line that folks can call in the Greater Richmond area and get connected to services in the Greater Richmond area for that kind of support. We, again, just want to make sure that people know you can call or text that number. Sometimes it's not safe for you to be able to pick up the phone and call, you can text and someone will respond and provide you that support. And so just want to make sure that folks know that. Also, like if, in an emergencies, of course, calling 911, and the Commonwealth Attorney's Office is available, and these numbers are here as well, 804-646-3500 or 804-646-2550. Again, there's help. We are working really hard to improve services and coordinate services better so that survivors of domestic and sexual violence, no matter who they are, no matter their gender, race, color, creed, anything, can get the services and support that they need. And so please know that we're here, and it is a community effort. It is definitely a community effort. We don't know everything. We don't understand everything. We're learning, and our best folks are the folks in the community on the ground who can help support us and make sure that we are supporting those folks of violence who are experiencing violence best way possible. Thank you.
So in closing, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, the YWCA, the Richmond Police Department, and a number of community stakeholders are proud to be part of a nationwide movement that recognizes that justice means more than prosecution. It means prevention, it means protection, and it means partnership. Our Richmond Family Justice Center will be guided by best practices from around the country, but it will be uniquely Richmond's. It will be built with input from our residents, rooted in our community's values, and sustained by our commitment to public safety for all. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
All right, and ladies, I'd like to apologize. I just realized that the podium's on a stand, so that's my fault, But you guys did great. So it's about 6 inches higher than it normally should be. So now, and look, I'm not going to get into a lot of details related to Operation Safe Summer, but we started May 31st. In that little over a month, we've seized 105 firearms, 97 felony arrests, 70 misdemeanor arrests, 105 warrants served, and 112 traffic summons issued, a lot of drugs, a lot of guns. And we couldn't do it without our partners from the FBI, the ATF, the Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office, obviously the Richmond Police Department, Virginia State Police, U.S. Marshals, DEA, and our partners at the Richmond Commonwealth Attorney's Office. So again, I won't go into a lot of detail. We'll have a full review at the next press briefing when it's completed. But again, we're off to the right track, and you can see just kind of significant rifles and firearms taken during this operation. Large-scale kilograms of cocaine, fentanyl, heroin, a lot of marijuana, but just a lot of high-powered firearms that I'm glad are off of our streets. Our friends at the NAACP have joined us today. So President J.J. Minor, Ms. Sandra Antoine, Charles Willis, thank you for coming today. And I'd like to highlight them helping us with a local day out for National Gun Violence Day, which, as you all know, was on June 6th. Piggybacking on some of the hot spots, we had these events, community conversations. I attended one in Mosby Court with the mayor. JJ was there. A lot of great, it's a time for fellowship and a time to talk about ways we can work together to lower our violence. And I just have to say that, this wasn't organized by the Richmond Police Department. This was the NAACP, and we were lucky enough to be invited. So thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I always want to highlight 558 of these high-quality safes have been distributed by the Richmond Police Department since our program began in 2023. We have more. The only thing we ask is if you know someone who has a firearm and it's unsecured, let one of us know. You can call Dr. Gwen Andrews at 804-516-0451, and we will do an assessment and get you a safe that day. All of our 4 precinct commanders have these safes in the precincts ready to deploy. If an officer goes to a house and there is a firearm in that house and nothing illegal is happening, but that firearm's unsecure, we want to be able to help you secure that weapon so that we can lower that number of children that are accidentally shot in our city. So some of you may have read this. The Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police highlighted the Richmond Police Department and our partners at the Department of Public Works and Vision Zero for a significant reduction in traffic fatalities last year of 32%. We're really pleased with that. Slowing people down, ensuring driver safety translates into life. And when we talk, about death in our city, the gun violence gets most of the attention, but these deaths are just as important. These families are just as broken. And to the extent possible, slowing down, being more careful saves lives. And part of that is the environment, the environmental design from the engineers at Department of Public Works is playing a part, the education for us, and then the enforcement. So the Richmond Police Department's enforcing that as well, and we're seeing some good gains. This year, however, midway, we're up a bit in fatal crashes. The majority, as you can see, are pedestrians. And when I talk about, and some of these pedestrians who have died that are being struck by vehicles, the person stays on scene and they're not charged with a crime. That we have to talk about pedestrian safety as well. Like when you're walking on a dimly lit street, if you have your earbuds in, if you're intoxicated, all of those things come into play. And we just have to continue to talk about pedestrian safety. I'm not talking about the person that's standing on the sidewalk and a car hops the curb. I'm talking about people that try to cross at intersections in streets where there is no intersection and they get struck by a vehicle. So, while it's better than 2023, we did see a slight uptick. So now some good news with property crime. So property crime, all down with the exception of shoplifting. As you all know, the majority of our shoplifting is continuously taking place at ABC stores. That's up 7%, but everything else from commercial burglary to residential burglary to theft for motor vehicle, our biggest crime in the city, and certainly motor vehicle theft, all down for a reduction of 14% in overall property crime. And as you know, those are major numbers. So we have 4,002 property crimes for the mid-year. Last year at that time, we had 4,636. So, and that affects many more people than simply the, some of the crimes of violence. We obviously care most about violent crimes, but this affects more Richmonders. So we're very pleased with that number, and we're continuing to work to drive those stats down. And we'll talk about why we think specifically motor vehicle theft is down. So here's again the property crime threshold. As you can see, we're below the average, but last year we're down 14%, but it's about 1% over the average reduction. But where we saw the most gain, as you can see last year, the beginning, the second part of 2023 and the full year of 2024, we saw an explosion in thefts or motor vehicle thefts. As you all know, driven by Kia and Hyundai. So we've taken a program where we're giving out these wheel locks that again, things that we have in our city that you can go to your precinct and your captain will give you one of these for free if you're a Richmond resident and have a Kia or a Hyundai. I'm seeing these everywhere. It's like kind of, once you start knowing to look for it, I'm walking past cars and I see these everywhere on Kia and Hyundais in the city, and every time I see it, I'm thankful because I know that thieves will bypass those cars. The other thing I want to talk about is we count motor vehicle thefts even if the thieves are unsuccessful. So if they break into a car and crack the steering column, that counts as an attempted. That's so 20% of that 468, the thieves aren't even able to get the Kia and Hyundai. The reason we track it is because we know the intention. We know they're not just smashing the window as a vandalism or smashing the steering column as a vandalism. They're doing it in an attempt to steal the car. But we're seeing great reductions with that. The updates from Kia and Hyundai are making it harder to steal, and as the thieves continue to learn that, we're going to see less going forward, I believe. So we're very, very pleased with that, and that's what's driving a lot of our reduction, although we did see a great reduction in theft from motor vehicles as well. Again, firearms theft from motor vehicles at the midpoint, again, for the second year in a row, down. So a 6% decrease. As you can see in our heat map, that is blazing yellow in the Shockoe Bottom where our guns continue to be stolen. So a lot of guns in the Shockoe Bottom continue to be stolen. That's just an indicator of the amount of guns that are down there. But again, pleased with the reduction, but that's still 249 illegal firearms by definition in the hands of criminals that shouldn't be there. So we encourage the community to lock your guns up, to put them in safes, and to not bring them. Your car is not a good place to store your guns. So when we combine property crime, violent crime, overall major crime for the first half of the year is down 12%. Again, we're flat with violent crime, down 2%, but the 14% drives the majority of our crime for a 12% reduction in overall major crimes. Again, pleased with that. We still have work to do. And just to give updates on our commitment to community engagement. So every month, as you know, we pick a neighborhood and we do a community walk in a neighborhood that is experiencing gun violence. These are some pictures from Brooklyn Park and from Ashley Oaks neighborhood. The next community walk is July 16th in Sector 211 at 36 and McMahon Street in South Richmond. You're all invited to come. It'll be at 5 o'clock. We'll update that on our social media, but we will be doing that walk. Again, listening, having the officers who patrol that neighborhood, knocking on the neighbors' doors, getting to know them on their first name basis, and hearing from the horse's mouth what they're seeing in their neighborhood and how we can help address it. Another part of our commitment to community engagement is our monthly pop-ups. So, the next one is going to be in Belt Atlantic on July 22nd. Also in Sector 211, Belt Atlantic is a place where, we're making a lot of great strides, but it is a neighborhood that we are still concerned about and we focus on. And this is just yet another opportunity for us to have an event where there's not crime scene tape up, where community members in that neighborhood get to come out and meet their police department in some fellowship and just learn what we can do better as partners. And again, we're excited about National Night Out. That's coming August 5th. We have about 14 areas that have already been selected, that have registered with us. We're encouraging members of the community to continue. I see you smiling, Charles. We got your registration. We're getting ready. So we're encouraging other members to register on our website so we can come out and visit with everyone on National Night Out. And you can go to rva.gov, Richmond, or police/National Night Out. So Richmond has the gold standard for CALEA, so that's the Commission to Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. We met that gold standard last year. One of the things we're asking folks to do is, if you have a community comment, to come on this website and talk to us in a portal. So community members can go on there and give a compliment or a complaint, and it's tracked by CALEA when we go up for our next accreditation. So we want to make that opportunity available for everyone. Again, we always talk about our hiring. So we are hiring. The starting salary for once you complete the academy is almost $63,000 a year. We did an analysis of a 3-year officer with their overtime. The average officer is making $84,000 plus after 3 years of experience with the Richmond Police Department. And look, I have to really, we've gotten significant pay raises to follow the two counties, Chesterfield and Henrico, so we're keeping pace with them. So the barrier before, which was a huge salary disparity, is no longer in play, and we're excited about that. So we have our next testing date, July 19th at 7 a.m. at the Academy. The one after that is August 2nd. And then we're doing something a bit different. On August 13, we're doing a testing and open house. So if you're not even registered to take the test, we encourage folks to come there. There'll be officers showing you around the Academy, talking to you about the benefits, and you can even apply at that open house. So again, we're looking for great young men and women to consider the Richmond Police Department and a career in law enforcement. And again, graduated May 16th, the largest academy since 2019. 23 recruits hit the street from the 129th. That's that class up there. We're currently have 14 in the academy at the 130th basic recruit class. We have our 9th lateral academy starting this month, and then 131st basic recruit class starts in August. So we're still filling that class. All right, that's what I have for everyone. I'm happy to answer a few questions.
Yes, sir. Chief Charles Pyle with WRVA. It's nice to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you.
Earlier this year, you expressed some frustration about the courts and how they were dealing with some of these cases with individuals with firearms, particularly in Shockoe Bottom. What are your feelings about that now? And have those been changed by any of the data that you presented this morning?
Well, I can tell you that there were some cases that were dropped earlier in the year. Instead of just complaining about it, I went to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, asked them to give our officers the training they need to be more successful in those cases. I know that even misdemeanor gun cases lead to violence. It's an indicator. I can tell you for a fact that, I don't know what it's like nationwide, but 26% of juveniles arrested by the Richmond Police Department with an illegal firearm will be shot before their 18th birthday, and it's about 20% for adults. So it's not that it's like almost like a blinking light. So I take those very seriously. And Ms. McEachin was nice enough to send two of her top prosecutors to come train our officers in the nuance that is required in our court system. And I mentioned it previously. There are certain things that are expected in that courthouse that no other police department in the Commonwealth, as far as I know, is required to do. So, but as you may know, last week I was in court on a gun case from a Shockoe Bottom on a gun I seized. And luckily the person pled guilty and we had a successful result for that. But even though those misdemeanor cases of illegal firearm possession, whether it's a concealed weapon or it's an extended magazine, they're still important for us to get justice and to hold people accountable because it has an impact on everything else. So I think we're seeing more success, and I'm pleased and really thankful to the Richmond Commonwealth Attorney's Office for taking the time to put our officers through that training. It's very laborious, but I'm pleased with where we are now, and we're going to continue to do our best to get those successful results.
But just to clarify, you still see a standard here that police departments aren't required to meet in other jurisdictions in the Commonwealth?
Yes. What I mean by that is, Mr. Powell wrote an article where 6 cases were null prost in that specific courthouse, and I was contacted by chiefs around the Commonwealth saying, hey, what's this case law? Why are these cases being dropped? And I said, there is no case law. Essentially, the difference is, and this is part of the training, is because concealed weapons, it's easy to get a concealed weapons permit in Virginia. If an officer sees an individual with what they believe is a concealed weapon on their person, whether it's, it's under a jacket, but you can still see the L-shaped shape. And that's what happened in the case I was involved in. I was standing there talking to an individual who I knew didn't have a concealed weapons permit because he walked back with a rifle. But as I'm standing talking to him, his shirt moves and I can see this very distinctive L-shaped outline. So I knew that was a firearm, and because I knew that he didn't have a concealed weapons permit, I was able to arrest him for that. So what was happening is our officers would see that. They'd say, hey, do you have a gun on you? And the person may say yes, and they'd pat him down and take the gun. Well, those cases were being dropped. And what the Commonwealth Attorney has asked us to do to successfully navigate that courthouse is instead of saying, hey, is that a gun, or going right for the pat down to say, do you have a concealed weapons permit? If the person says no, then you go for that. So that's a step there is no case law requiring that. But like I said, I'm committed to doing everything we can to take away the barriers for convictions in that courthouse.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Chief, can you give us a bit more explanation on the findings for the officers involved in the Melbourne Street shooting, considering the suspect was unarmed in that case?
Well, as we released the day it happened, that individual, no weapon was found at the scene, but the individual did make certain movements towards his waistband, and then a specific movement in what can only be described as a shooting stance like this, and the officers discharged their firearms. It was reviewed by the Richmond Commonwealth Attorney's Office. They declined to prosecute, and then I did my internal review for policy violations, but that's where it stands right now.
A couple questions. With the traffic-related fatalities, there were 2 screens. I don't know if you could go back to them really quickly, but back to back, you said that there were 32% decrease between 2024 and 2025. But then also the screen after that showed there were 6 pedestrian deaths right there. Yeah.
Yep.
If you go to that screen, and the next slide, there were 6 pedestrian deaths in 2024, but then 9 in 2025, which is an increase. So is that a different?
This is for 2024. So this doesn't factor into this year's data, which is an increase. So they were just acknowledging 2024 data over the previous full year.
Totally separate question. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, we're kind of early in the new presidential administration, but there have been some reports about cuts to things like violence prevention programs in Charlottesville. And I just wonder if you could speak generally to any programs that we're running here that may have been affected or pulled back because of those, Trump pullbacks in funding for.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that right now. I will recognize we have Mr. Greg Hopkins right here, who is the mayor's director of violence prevention. And Greg started, I think you've been on for a week and a half, Greg? Yeah, 8 days, but we've already had our meetings. I don't want to put him on the spot. Next time you're going to be right up here with me, Greg. But I think Greg has some great ideas, and I don't know that there will be funding issues, but I know that this is a priority for the mayor, that looking at gun violence, not just from an enforcement standpoint, we totally understand that there are certain things that only the police can and should do, but violence prevention has a lot of facets to it, whether it's intervention at hospitals, intervention in our schools, or even at crime scenes. I can talk about, Charles isn't here anymore, I don't think I see him, but Charles Willis doesn't work for the Richmond Police Department, but he comes out to a lot of crime scenes and helps navigate those emotional scenarios along with our hired violence intervention specialists, our violence interrupters. So, I mean, I think those programs, whether or not we get grant funding, will be a priority for Mayor Avula.
They haven't gotten one, so I'll wait.
Thanks, Cam. Earlier this week, you guys sent out a release about terminating your relationship with ATF having access to those license plate readers. Can you talk a little bit about why they initially did have access, and if that was for some sort of safety measure, how you guys are filling the gap now that they aren't going to be working with that?
Well, I'll start by saying, ATF is an invaluable partner with us, and I think an analyst in February granted access to one of their analysts to our system. I'm sure that it didn't occur to them that ATF would be, and ATF deals specifically, historically with illegal gun possession, that sort of thing, gangs. We work very closely with them. So I'm sure it didn't occur to him that they would be tasked with an additional responsibility of immigration enforcement. So that was granted, and when we learned about it, it was obviously very concerning to me, because I know, in this business, we build, we build trust in thimbles and we lose it in buckets. And when I knew that this happened, I knew it was going to be a problem. So when I learned about it, I called the special agent in charge at ATF. Asked him to come down for a meeting from Washington. We had a very candid conversation on Monday. And while we're going to continue to partner where we can, I've been very clear with the supervisors of all the federal agencies in which we have task force officers about our officers not participating in that. And not because, and I want to be clear too, it's not that I'm saying that ICE or anyone else is doing something wrong. It's just a completely separate mission than we have. And when I look at crime in our city, I need people to feel comfortable calling 911. I need people to feel comfortable talking to my detectives about what happens to them. A disturbing trend we've found, and it's not a scientific study, but in Southwood, mid-year, which is a large Latino population, I don't know the demographics on legal or illegal, but I know that 34% reduction in calls for 911 are down this year as compared to last year. Same percentage, 34% less of those designated calls for domestic violence. So I'm sure there are women who are being abused in Southwood who are not calling the Richmond Police Department, and that concerns me greatly.
I was going to sort of build off of that with that exact question. Are you seeing situations with cases that are maybe going to the prosecution stage, and people, we saw what happened in Chesterfield, and the Commonwealth's attorney expressing concern that witnesses might not show up to testify for fear of being taken when they come to do that? Have you, beyond just this call data you're noticing at Southwood, have you noticed any other potential impacts of fear of ICE involvement because of engagements with police and prosecutors?
We have access to our Commonwealth attorney, so I'll invite Ms. McEachin to come down. But when I've highlighted this case before, but her office successfully prosecuted 2 individuals who robbed 7 different folks from the Latino community. They were, these are American robbers robbing these individuals, and we were able to convince those individuals to come to court and testify and bear witness in John Marshall Court Building and say what happened to them, and we were able to hold those individuals accountable. So, Ms. McEachin, do you have a thought on that, what you're seeing?
What I will say about that is that we have noticed some hesitation on the part of people who have Hispanic or Spanish surnames coming to court. We have a very active victim witness advocate program, And so when those individuals are victims of violent crimes or any crime, we work with them to reassure them that we are not going to allow the prosecution of violent crime to be hindered by the attitude that some people have about whether or not the victim is a citizen or a legal resident. That cannot be our North Star. Our North Star is public safety for everyone. And so that is where we are. Right now, we have not had to dismiss a case against a violent offender because the victim was Hispanic or Spanish-speaking and reluctant to come. We nurture them and support them and get them to the point where they trust us and recognize that they will not be harmed. And in fact, I want to let everyone know that there is something called a U visa, U like umbrella, and that is a visa that the federal government can give victims who cooperate and testify and work with law enforcement to make sure that violent criminals and the offenders are put away. And if that happens, then the victim is able, through an attorney, to apply for a U visa. And if the U visa is granted, they have 3 years of automatic status in the United States because of their cooperation with public safety. So it works well on both sides. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Another question, Chief. You may have read that the United Daughters of the Confederacy filed a lawsuit recently, I think it was in May, with the hope that at some point they might be able to use subpoena power to identify suspects in the firebombing of their headquarters 5 years ago. Is there still an active Richmond police investigation into the firebombing of the UDC headquarters?
You know, I'm unaware of it. We can check and get back to you. There's certainly nothing I've been briefed on.
In terms of
Of that, I'm not even aware of the investigation. Obviously, I wasn't the chief at the time. I think I was a captain during that time in First Precinct. So I'm not, I know that happened. I know they had security there, but I'm unaware of any active investigation. Yes, sir, Jamal.
Chief, 2 questions. First of all, I know you guys talked about the 15 hotspots, which was an issue in the first quarter. I don't know if I missed it or not, but has any of those hotspots gotten better? Have they increased by any chance? I know specifically you're talking about the Shockoe Bottom area, but anything or updates with that one as well?
Yeah, I think some of the ones that dropped off the list, one in particular was the 2900 block of Chamberlain, which included a specific hotel, which has been a real source for 911 calls. And I don't have the exact data, but it dropped off by, by a significant quantity of 911 calls there. We're not seeing the shootings we used to see there. So working together to make that place safer through environmental design and also through, just our enforcement strategy has really helped them drop off that list, and it added some others. So,
Is that the only one that's dropped off?
no, there were others. I think there was some consolidation on some. These are pretty sticky though. So we know that as we progress, and we never look at a situation as solved. We look at it as some are hotter than others, and we want to rotate those locations where they can do the most good.
And then last question, just I know you may not know this or have the answer for this question, but any update on the Office of Gun Violence Prevention that Mayor Bula announced a couple months ago, and what's the status on that?
They've hired the director, Greg, right behind there. So we've had our preliminary meetings, and we look forward to working hand in glove with them.
Okay. All right, no problem.
Chief, I know it's a summertime issue, but we've been getting complaints about ATVs riding aggressively on the streets, particularly in the pulse lanes. Anything RPD's doing differently right now in response to that? And you speak about the dangers of chasing those guys. And was there any charges against the one that hit the cruiser last week?
No, not that I'm aware of. I know we are constantly making those arrests. We see the social media videos. I see people driving crazy on dirt bikes and ATVs, but it's always a risk versus reward that our supervisors in the field have to take into place. Not only for a pursuit with the public, but the operator themselves. One of the tactics that we like to use, though, is when we have our airplane in the air, we're able to quietly follow that person, let our officers on the ground surround them when it's a safe place to do it, because high-speed pursuits with those types of vehicles are can have tragic results. So we need to be very careful while still understanding that it is a public safety nuisance. It is frustrating, to see people taking over lanes, and it's something that is very frustrating for officers to deal with. Yes, sir.
Chief, could you update us on the activities of state police in the city in concert with Richmond Police?
Yes, sir. They're partnering with us with Operation Safe Summer. So you will see Richmond police officers in state police cars and vice versa. They are participating in almost all. State police is by number the biggest partner we have in Operation Safe Summer. So they are working with us. They're performing search warrants with us. They're riding in cars with us. So it's a very close partnership. Luca.
The Times had a report about the resignation of Stan Meador at the FBI, and I wonder if you might say anything. I know from where we sit, we really don't get a lot of window into how you guys collaborate on these big projects, and getting sweeps and things like that, but I wonder if you think that is a loss for our community in terms of safety.
Well, Stanley Meador is an incredible person. He was very kind to me in the early days being acting chief, with phone calls and with advice. And he was a great public safety partner. But that is a loss, and but that doesn't mean that our partnership with the FBI ended. I just got a call from their assistant special agent in charge this morning about an operation we're working on together. So we still have that partnership, but Stanley was special, and I really enjoyed working with him. Thanks, folks. All right, appreciate everyone.